What paranormal events have happened to you that you can't prove? No one will believe you. About 2 months ago, I was sitting in the dining hall of my university eating lunch with a friend. All of a sudden, midway through my sentence, I noticed out of my peripheral vision that my water cup moved a little bit. My friend didn't notice, so I brushed it off as seeing things and continued finishing my sentence. Then, as soon as I finished saying whatever I was telling my friend, we both very clearly saw my water cup slide from one side of the table to the other, all on its own. Fast too, much faster and farther than the previous movement. I began laughing hysterically and my friend's eyes were wide open, jaw to the floor. Every time I mention it to someone else though, they don't find it as interesting or brush it off as I initially did. Anyways, I just wanted to share this odd experience and see what other experiences people have encountered. Cheers. Edit. Alright, I didn't go into much depth, but there's a couple important details to this. Some people have been saying perhaps the condensation from my cup caused it to slide across the table. Although this is something that happens, and I've seen it happen before, I don't think it did in this case. I can't prove it, say this is 100% true, but I recall my water cup was empty. I already drank the water itself. Furthermore, my friend's cup had a light ring of moisture around the bottom of his cup, but on the contrary, the bottom of my cup was completely dry. This is why I started laughing on sight. I couldn't explain it in any way, so I just accepted it. I'm naturally very skeptical of everything, but this, along with other minor unexplainables I have experienced, changed my perspective to allow and recognized when there's a greater force present. Okay, there's one that I recently thought of again. I always used to go outside at night to have a smoke, mostly around 11 or 2. I was just sitting in my chair just looking out at the trees etc. when I saw this black thing come from behind some trees and just floating forward. I was rationalizing it as a balloon or something, trying not to freak myself out. This thing then just turns in the air towards my direction, and I felt a huge wave of dread. Like my chest is tight and my arm hairs stand up. I just ran inside and put my smoke out in the sink, locked the sliding doors and windows and stayed away from them. It honestly looked like that Flatwoods monster, like the outline of it matches what it was wearing, but it was pure black, couldn't see any face to it. Edit, it looked short though, not tall at all from where I was. I have a few 3 experiences to share. First, when I was younger, around 7 to 9 years old, I was in bed trying to get to sleep. I used to sleep in a bedroom with my brother and sister. We had a bunk bed and one single bed. I was laying in the bottom bunk trying to sleep when my blanket got pulled off me with force. Mind you that there's no way whoever was on the top bunk, I've forgotten who it was, but for simplicity, let's say my sister was on the top bunk and my brother was in the single bed, could have reached down and pulled my blanket off. And with the single bed, not only was it too far away from the bunk bed for my brother to be able to reach over to my blanket, but there was also a table in the way, so if my brother was pulling a prank, he wouldn't have had enough time to get out of bed, pull my blanket off, and run back to his bed without me catching him. After my blanket got pulled off, I was pretty scared because my house at the time was haunted according to my family, but I pulled my blanket back over me, then about 5 minutes later, it happened again. I was still scared but was able to pull the blanket back over me again, but then it happened a 3rd time. After that, I got out of bed and went to my living room to tell my mom. It never happened again after that. Second, towards the start of this year, I woke up early one day, around 6 a.m. After I got up, I went out into my backyard to check on my cats when I saw what looked like a completely black head peek around the corner of a fence. The fence is inside my backyard. It should be noted that I live across the road from a cemetery, like it literally only takes 30 seconds to walk to it. It's all I see when I look out my bedroom window, but even though I've lived here for 3 years, it was the first paranormal experience I've had living here. Third, my latest experience happened in July of this year. On the 9th of July, my mum sadly passed away from cancer. About 2 weeks after she passed, I went into her bedroom to see if my sister was hungry. My mum and sister slept in the same room. After knocking on the door a few times and getting no answer, I slowly opened the door. I tried saying her name a few times, but she didn't respond. I assumed she was in a deep sleep. Anyway, I hadn't turned on the light because I didn't want to wake her up, but I swear I could see a pair of legs in my mum's bed. Mind you that we didn't let anyone sleep in my mum's bed, mainly because it was too dirty. Also, I found out the next day that the reason why my sister wasn't responding is because she wasn't even home. So turns out that when I saw what I'm thinking, and kind of hoping, was a ghost of my mum. No one was in the room. Maybe 2 to 3 people do believe me, but it's easy to try and make excuses, even to yourself. The house my mum and stepdad still live in used to have what I assume was a ghost. Lots of different things happened, but I'll recall what I can now. It was a short black slinky figure, kind of like a tiny black Grinch, and it was super fast like it ran everywhere. I used to wake up with something grabbing my shins and then wake up with random bruises on my legs. Way too often. One night, I woke up to something with its hands around my throat neck but passed it off as a dream or something. Not long after, when my brother was visiting, it grabbed him around the neck. I heard a loud noise, like a bang, something falling, and ran to see what it was, and objects from the television cabinet, candles, ornaments and photo frames were all on the ground on the other side of the room, too far a distance to have just fallen there. Mum assured me we are stronger than it and suggested I tell it to go away. Sounds simple, but every time I felt like it was there, I would do just that, and eventually it all stopped. Not a creepy house at all now, and I've spent maybe 2 years living there alone while they lived overseas. Still slept with lights on though. Now I've been living with my partner at another house in the same valley about 45 minutes away for around a year and a half. Maybe 6 months ago, while I was sleeping in the spare room by myself, snoring partner on 2 single bed mattresses stacked on each other, I woke at about 2 to 3 a.m. to my bed shaking backwards and forwards to what felt exactly like someone kicking my bed really hard at the foot of the mattresses, quite violently to describe it in some way. I remember opening my eyes terrified and closing them again from fear. The room felt horrible, sickening from fear, and I tried to sing out, but I couldn't make any noise but whimper, so I went to reach from my phone on the chair next to the bed for light, but it was like something was holding my hand back from reaching over. I opened my eyes and I pushed hard to get to my phone, grabbed it, and quickly turned on the torch when I saw a little black creature like the one above run to a dark corner. I shone the light there and it was gone. Now I've had a lot of paranormal experiences and I can usually calm myself, but the feeling in the room and the ability of this thing to physically control me and move the bed to such a degree scared the life out of me, so I moved in bed with my partner, and darn, it was the best his snoring ever sounded. Weirdest thing about this instance, the next day our landlord neighbor came over and happened to mention the day before she had a visitor who had a bad spirit attached. She said they did some healing, and afterwards, she saw a little black creature described exactly the same, running through her house. Then I told her my experience and it really spun us both out. Not sure if it's the same little creature terrorizing the valley or if it's trying to get to me. Still sleeping with the light on. This happened when I was in 8th grade. My school bus was the first one to arrive at school, and the time was like 6:30. It was winter, so it was dark outside. I was always the first to enter the classroom, so like I did every day, I put my bag to my desk and went to the huge windows. In front of the windows, there is a radiator which was like warm. I remember I sat on it and watched outside. After some time, my classmates started to come into the classroom and someone turned on the lights, so I was able to see the classroom by reflection. While there were 4 students in class, my childhood friend X came into the classroom. He put his bag and sat on the desk right behind me. I thought he would scare me because he was quite a jokester, so I waited for him to do it so I could turn and mock with him like, "I saw you." So I started to wait. All he was doing was moving his head, looking around and moving his shoulder regularly. I couldn't see details of him, but it was obviously him. Suddenly, I turned like, "WTF is your problem?" But then there was no one. The other students in my classroom stared at me while I froze like a dead man. My eyes searched for him in the classroom, but he wasn't even there yet. So I turned back to the windows silently and I tried to realize what happened. After like 10 minutes, he arrives to class with his jacket and hat and bag and etc. I just told what I experienced to my friend and my mom, and they believed me, but others just didn't. I was out walking with a friend. Our favorite place to go was the forest behind our town graveyard. We had a paranormal encounter there before where we seen a man walk through the forest. He was wearing old-timey clothing and he had these large wolves walking beside him. He literally walked right by us and disappeared. He didn't even acknowledge us. He just walked by with about 7 wolves by his side. They didn't even look at us. He just walked by and disappeared into thin air. What is strange that this is Ireland and wolves have been extinct in Ireland for centuries. This man just disappeared into thin air with the wolves. My friend was frozen to the spot and I literally shook so hard with fear. It wasn't fear of seeing him disappear, it was pure fear that he was walking wolves. Thank God my friend was there to witness it too. But this isn't the weirdest part to the tale. We left the forest really quick after that encounter. There was a tiny bit of a field beside the forest. We had to pass it to get back onto the footpath so we could go home. As we were passing the field, we looked at what was sitting in the field. It was a creature. Top half of it was human, the bottom half wasn't. It had two large black wings. It was just sitting there on the grass with two big black wings. Its face was so evil. The worst feeling I've ever felt in my entire life when we looked at it. My friend called it a gargoyle when describing it because the face was black as coal and it has two of the most evil eyes I've ever seen with slits down the middle. It raised its head from the sorrowful bowed head position it was in and looked us dead straight in the eyes. I felt a rush of complete fear and complete sickness wash over me. It was as if we were about to die. The feeling was that bad. When it looked at us, I heard the words run really loud in my head. We just legged it. We ran back into town and civilization. Now I've never ran since I was a child, but boy did I run. When we got back into town, we literally couldn't stop shaking. My friend and I had complete nightmares about it for years afterwards. I still to this day shake when I try and relive the memory, and I've had my fair share of paranormal encounters. I am really glad that there was both of us to experience these two events. Especially the gargoyle demon creature. If I was on my own, I probably would have died. To this day, we still talk about it. I got talking to a lady who does spiritual healing, and I was telling her about the creature. She literally couldn't stop thinking about it, and she couldn't sleep thinking of it. Very strange indeed.